Is that right? Or second and fourth? I don't know.
Something around, yeah.
Cool.
The oldest one really loves school and thrives. The second one um, doesn't. Uh, he's a mechanical wizard, but he doesn't like reading all that much. So they've been doing a lot of homeschool since March, and um, they've kind of figured out some things, about reading to each other and uh,
Mhm.
ways to deal with learning.
Gotcha. Cool. I think we can go ahead and jump in. I love that. I love that we have the grandparents here. That's so sweet.
Um, all right, so well, my experience is very different. So I did the in-person summer school from all of July, 4 days a week, alternate or not alternating schedules. I had the same group of kids every day. My virtual experience, though, back in from March to May, was also very different compared to others since I only specifically teach math. So I was monitoring students in math and helping parents along that way. Uh, but when it comes to, and then also luckily I had fifth graders, so they're some motivational needs to happen to get them going, but for the most part they're very self-sufficient where they can use their microwave, feed themselves, do what they need to do. Parents don't have to continuously watch them. It's more of an update towards the end of the week. So Carol talked about her grandkiddos are doing virtual. Cheryl, you said that your family is still making decisions of whether they want to go in person and virtual. So I will hit on virtual definitely for Carol, and I'll do both for you, Cheryl, so you can go to your family and give the information provided. I see that Tressa joined us. Tressa, is there anyone that you were joining to want to get more information about or better understand?
Not a particular one, no. I'm just listening to listen.
Okay, awesome. So really quick, I will talk about my in-person experience. It was not as scary as I anticipated it to be. The guidelines were fairly easy to manage. Granted, I had a class of 15. So it was easy to keep their desks very spaced out so they didn't have to wear a mask all day because they were at least 6 feet. Um, but and then with district and following the health department guidelines, some things change. And again, after this class, things may change. But in my in-person experience wasn't necessarily as scary as I thought it would be. The main reason why I did in-person summer school was to kind of have a better understanding of fall. Being a teacher in Missouri, I knew that Governor Parson was going to more than likely not delay or not let us start virtual and go back to in-person. Again, that could always change depending on what happens. For our district, masks are required if students are within 6 feet. I noticed that I wear a mask majority of the day versus my students since I'm walking around, I'm like talking with children, and it's just easier to keep it on rather than off on, off on. Students wise, I did second and third grade class split. When it came to mask, they did very, very well with keeping their mask on. Some of the kiddos, when I called parents to introduce myself, I asked them if their kiddos were used to wearing masks, not used to wearing masks, just so I had an idea of what I was coming into. Some of them, some families didn't do the mask. So their kiddo sadly didn't wear a mask during summer school. And so they had to keep their distance throughout the whole day. But then it's kind of, I don't want to say it was a pressure, but whenever that student wanted to work with peers, I noticed that that student would ask for a mask, wear the mask to interact with their peers. Good. So even the kiddos that are like, I don't wear a mask, eventually they wore a mask because the social interaction is important for them. However, it seems that so that was my experience. What some tips, because I know that Carol already said she was doing virtual. Cheryl, you said your family's kind of up in the air about it. So when it comes to tips about in-person school, since our class, I don't know what class sizes look like for me. At the moment right now, my team went from a 3-man team to a 2-man team. So I really don't even know what subjects I'm teaching at the moment. Because so many kids signed up for virtual, which I'm so happy that families have the opportunity to do that, and are able to do that. But I'm also very happy for the families sending their kids into school, because watching it and watching the kids interact with each other, it was truly beautiful to be in that setting again and see that, yes, things are different, but at the same time, it felt very much like nothing changed. Obviously things did, because we're more socially distanced. There's less hugs. There's less like physical contact with high fives and stuff. But for the most part, all the students, there's a lot of laughter. There's giggling. They're still talking. Granted, now they're talking louder across the room. But, it's summer school. I wasn't going to call on to that. And even in the beginning of the school year, I'm going to allow space for that, because these kids haven't seen each other since March, depending on the family and how they view the pandemic. But in-person tips that I would suggest for people that are watching it at home that are getting the recording is I would get, and again, just suggestions. I would get like a lightweight lanyard to put on your kiddo's mask right here, so they're not fumbling their mask all up with their hands to take it on and off. That way, if it's just around their neck, 1, they're not going to lose it. 2, that way they can just get the earpieces, put it back on, instead of, because how kiddos do, imagine wadding a paper towel. That's what it looks like when they're messing with their mask. Also, I'd have the conversation with your kiddo that if they do forget to, because a lot of the time kiddos would forget to put on their mask before they got out of their seat, and their first reaction is to do this. So I had a lot of conversations like, oh, we shouldn't be touching our face. Like, it's okay if we forget our mask, just walk, go get it, put it on. But their immediate reaction is to act as their hand is a mask. And that defeats the purpose of keeping our hands out of our face. Another tip is get your kiddo used to wearing a mask. With larger class sizes, the likelihood of the desk being 6 feet apart is going to be very hard and difficult. So your kiddo may actually wear a mask more than what they did in summer school. I think this is a really good idea, because parents are battling technology time and not technology time. So it could be one of those things, oh, if you want to get on your tablet, put on your mask. And then kind of just set a timer. So then they're just getting acclimated to their mask. They're getting the technology time. So they're not even thinking about the mask necessarily. But then if you realize like, oh, if your kiddo's like, I don't want to wear my mask, well, then I guess good news is you're going to get your kid off their tablet. So either way is a win-win, I guess, for parents. Another tip I would suggest doing is that most kids are eating lunch in their classroom. And the lunch period is roughly 20-25 minutes. Teachers probably will get a little more freedom depending on their schedule and what it looks like, but making sure that your kiddo's lunch is easy openable, like where your kid can open everything by themselves. That way the teacher's not spending their whole lunch period opening up items and not getting to eat themselves. Granted, most teachers probably won't mind, but the autonomy of your kiddo to be able to do everything on their own and less interactions with like the teacher touching your child's food and doing that, making sure that everything is easy to open or can at least be opened with scissors at their seat. That is one thing I noticed about summer school is my lunch period was more helping kids opening up their milk, their juice, their ranch. If they can't get their bottle open or something like that. And then, so I'd have to go wash my hands, go over there, do it. Then it just created like a weird, like now the kid has to touch it, eat it. it's one of those things. I think for my district, I think they're providing gloves. So now it's one of those things that if I do need to open up kiddos' food, wash my hand, put on a glove. That way it's not my actual hand touching their food and stuff. So making sure that kiddos can open up their lunch and also practice eating in that 20-minute period. We've all been eating at home, and I'm a grazer, so having a 20-minute lunch, I'm like, oh, I didn't finish half of it. So just practicing opening up their lunch, eating for 20 minutes. That way your kid doesn't feel frustrated that they weren't able to eat during lunch itself. Hand washing, hopefully we've been in a pandemic now for a few months. So hopefully the hand washing, it's good to go, but it's one of those things just to make sure that your kiddo is used to washing their hands, because I know during summer school, personally, we had at least 3 hand washing breaks. So making sure that your kiddo is able to wash their hands effectively, knows how to dry their hands with the appropriate amount of things. That one's pretty easy though to teach, because that's like a 30-second lesson. But the big one that I noticed was the lunch, kiddos not being able to open it, and just the helpful trick of the lanyard with the mask so they don't have to touch their mask all over with their hands. Another thing is, I know the district I'm at, we couldn't use the water fountains. So making sure that your kiddo has a big enough water bottle that they can carry it and last them throughout the day, but small enough where it doesn't take a huge amount of space, but also that it is easy to open as well. Or at least one that the top pops off and water can fit in the spout that uses that if they can't get the lid. Because it seemed like a lot of the time parents would twist on the cap because they don't want it to spill, but then when kids wanted to refill it, they couldn't open it themselves. So, and then also it was like one of the water bottles where the hole is like this big and you have to bite to get the water out. Again, see the purpose, it's so that it doesn't leak in their backpack, but at the same time, it kind of defeats the purpose if I have to put my hands on top of your kid's water bottle to open it up. So that's another thing that I noticed. As for virtual, with virtual comes a lot of freedom, but also at the same time, a lot of responsibility. From my understanding, the virtual curriculum for most districts is going to look like a school day. So back in the spring semester, your kiddo may have only had to be on the computer for maybe 2 hours and they were done. They met with their class for 10, 15 minutes and then did their schoolwork. Their schoolwork didn't take a ton of time because we were in a transition phase. But now I think virtual learning, I don't know, because I'm an in-person teacher. I didn't get chosen or choose to be virtual. But I think it's going to be more rigorous than what it was in the spring because it's new content. So I would anticipate your kiddo being in front of a computer for 5-6 hours, which is a lot of time to be on a computer. A lot of time. A big helpful hint is I would set up a schedule or a routine. All children, teenagers, adults, we thrive on routine. And having that schedule where they know your expectations would be very beneficial. And it's one of those things with virtual learning, it's kind of hard to do if you're working because you're working, your kiddo's working. So sometimes it's like the uni time. So you give them tablet time or doing this or doing that. You have to find what works best for you and your family. I do suggest though creating a schedule or routine where they see it, they know expectations. And then like what school teachers do, I would model those expectations. Like 8 a.m., you're waking up, you're eating breakfast. This is what it looks like. This is what you can eat if I can't cook you breakfast. And then give a time frame. Like, so from like 8 to 8:30, it's breakfast. Then like 8:30 to 9, they can get ready for school. I do suggest you getting your kids ready for school. whether it be they shower, they get dressed. I would not have them do virtual learning in their pajamas, because then it creates kind of, as adults, we've seen it, that fog phase that all days are bleeding together. So creating a routine where your kid gets ready for school, even if they're not seeing anyone, let them dress in that cute outfit or do what they need to do to get ready for school. Then I would create like time blocks, like what school does. So like example, 9 to 10, that's when you're doing your reading assignment. Get on your device, look what your teacher's doing, what you need to do your reading. An hour for reading is what we do at the school. But again, with school comes some interruptions, like being able to use the restroom, talking with your friends, doing that. So if your kiddo doesn't work the full hour, that happens. I do suggest, though, getting their stamina up now. So like starting tonight, they could read 5 minutes, tomorrow 10 minutes, the next day 12 minutes. Just so that was a big thing for me and my students that I noticed in summer school, is that we weren't used to 8 hours of school. I noticed by like 11 a.m. I was like, whew, why am I still teaching? Why? Like, why are we not done yet? And I noticed that with myself. And so putting myself in a 9-year-old's position where they've been able to play outside or have the attention of their family or doing things that 9-year-olds do, they also weren't used to sitting down and reading for 30 minutes and being okay with it. Like, so building up that stamina and the expectations, doing it from there. I also, speaking of expectations, I would create a workspace. No TVs, no distractions. That way that you're like, that separates the learning and home. Because it's fair, I noticed with myself, like I was at home, so why am I going to get dressed? I can do all my home, like schoolwork, everything on the couch while watching TV. But then it kind of invaded my home space. So home didn't feel like home and work didn't feel like work. So creating that separate workspace where your kiddo, your student knows, like, okay, this is my workspace. This is where I need to get stuff done. When I get it done, I can go out, and then it's 2 different spaces. Again, with the schedule, creating a math time, a reading time, social studies, whatever your kiddo needs to do. And I do suggest, even if your kid finishes, say ELA time was an hour and your kiddo finishes it in 15 minutes, then have your student read for 20 minutes or double check their work or something along those lines. That way regression doesn't quite happen, because if students read a minimum of 20 minutes a day, their reading level will increase by a grade level. There's a study, it's the 1,000 words, or I think it's 1,000 words. It could be 100,000 words. I don't quite remember what it's called. But they did a study of children in different populations where one family read to their children every night, the children read, and then a family where it was more TV, limited interaction, and just the difference of academic that those children had in vocabulary and understanding and experience. Which, again, easier said than done. Like, I knew growing up, that is one thing we had in our household was books. Other households didn't have books, or trust me, I know what it is like to sit with a first grader and listen to them read out loud. I'm like, it's the word is that is a sight word. How do we not have this? And just getting so frustrated because it's Is that a word that you've heard of? No, it's the. I get it. It's challenging. But doing it when they're younger, it just makes their 5th grade year better, because they're able to see those words, distinguish them, and read them. Also with virtual, again, it's a if you're able to thing. But when your teacher is saying, this is our morning meeting, these are these interactions, even if your kiddo doesn't want to do it or doesn't talk in it or just watches everyone, I do see that there's a benefit of your kiddo at least showing up. Even if they don't talk, even if they just sit and listen, just the interaction and seeing their peers in their class is very beneficial for them. And also it's part of their routine. And keeping that routine Monday through Friday is crucial to make sure that they're able to do all the guidelines and the rigor and understanding, because it's one of those things that virtual may not be forever until they get to college and do online classes. And even then, it's one of those things like they'll have the virtual experience, but will they have the stamina and the discipline to do all the online work? Carol, you did mention that one of your grandkiddos wasn't successful about virtual learning. Do you care to share of some of the things that you noticed that made it seem that they weren't successful with it?
Okay, well, I didn't have anything to do. Well, I will say, come to think of it, I was supposed to monitor his work when he was here. In the summer, when he was home alone. That's right. He was at his home. I could. His mother showed me how to get online and check certain things. Well, he would tell me, well, I don't have to do that part. And things like, well, I already turned it in. It's just not posted yet. And, things like that. And in reality, most of that was in his mind and not in reality. So he really does not like school. And I think one of the reasons is because he's not up to grade level in reading. I don't know exactly where his reading level is, but his mother used to read with him all the time. And then once she became a nurse, her hours were, and her time away from him was greatly increased. And the time away from him was increased. And that has a lot to do with it, 100%. And so I'm happy to help him, and I'm going to try to see if he will be over here doing his work rather than at home and I just check it. I'm just supposed to go online and check it. In fact, I'm pretty sure either I'll be over at his house or he'll be here, because his mother said she doesn't trust him to do it on his own. And so if you have any suggestions, one of the things I thought of for trying to get him to do his work is some sort of behavior modification. If you do this, you get this reward. But for a 9th grader, I don't know. I don't know what the rewards are. The day of the star is over.
That's a great point. This could actually be beneficial for all virtual people, because in-person teachers do this as well. When you notice that a kiddo has low motivation to do any kind of work, whether it be hard, they just don't want to, it's too easy, it's really great to kind of set a timer where they see. So like, listen, if you work straight for 30 minutes, you can have 5-10 minutes of a break of playing on your tablet, your phone, whatever their interests are. Like some kids like the kinetic sand in my classroom. Some kids just like putting their head down because what they just did was really hard for them. It's one of those things that creating a behavior chart that, or like a habit chart, whatever you want to call it, finding out what the kiddo likes most to work for it will work. It's positive reinforcement. And teachers in the classroom do it as well. Because again, if you find a child that will read a whole hour or work a whole hour without getting distracted, talking to a peer, or taking a break of some sort, whether it be sharpening their pencil or blowing their nose, that's a great, that child's up here on the stamina and everything else level, because I'm not even up there yet. Like, I'm not up there. So distractions and breaks, it's fine if it happens. And also with kiddos that say, oh, I did that work. Every kiddo says that they did something even if they didn't do it. In the classroom, oh, I wrote those sentences. And the moment you're like, oh, well, can I see your paper to see what you have? Well, let me double check my work to make sure that I like it, and then I'll bring it to you. Oh, okay. Let me know when you're done and you want me to look at it. It's just that accountability piece, which again, what person doesn't say they've done something, or especially a task that you feel that you don't necessarily need to do. Oh, I have that done. Oh, well, let me see it. Let me double check my work. And even if they do say, oh, well, I finished it, instead of making them feel like you don't trust them or something, you could be like, oh, well, let's proofread it together, or let's double check it to make sure that we understood the concept, that we don't need to ask your teacher a question. Phrasing it in a way that says like, oh, I know you have it done, but let's make sure that it's our best work for that growth mindset. And then it's one of those things that they're like, no, I finished it. Instead of escalating your mood and their mood, just take a break from it. And then later on in the day, be like, hey, it's the end of the day. School day's almost over. Let's double check your work of what you've done today, because I would like to see what you learned about. Just to see if like, oh, I want to know if I remember this information. Because it's one of those things that like giving those kids accountability, but also where they can explain what they learned to you. Some kids really enjoy that. Other kids, nope. They're not going to say 3 words about it. So, but just making the autonomy piece where you do trust that they're doing their work. It's not like a, oh, I don't believe you, show me kind of thing. A more positive place, you'll probably get more positive outcomes. Because again, if your boss said, well, I don't believe you, show me, is your motivation for that boss going to increase, or is it going to decrease? Because it's one of those things, like if I say, usually with me, I will go, oh, I forgot to do it, I'm so sorry. Like I'll set an alarm to do it. Versus I did it. If you don't believe I did it, then the likelihood of me doing it in the future is very slim. Just my personality type. But like, again, with like the virtual, either way, everyone, you made a hard choice, or your family made a hard choice of keeping your kid home or sending them to school. Because either way, you come to the outcome of, well, if my kid stays home, are they actually getting the full education that they need? Are they going to be behind? Am I going to, like, how do I feel about my kid being in front of the computer for that many hours of the day? Because when your district says that they'll probably be in front of the computer for X amount of hours, that's not us teachers saying, oh, we're going to put you in front of the computer as long as we can. No, that's the state saying this is what qualifies as a school day, and these are our expectations to make sure that virtual learning works. So that like when it comes to decisions and curriculum and everything, it's very, very rare that a teacher went, you know, I'm going to have these kids do this activity for 3 hours because that's what I want to do. No, for the state, like I know DESE itself, I think for it to qualify, at least for summer school, the content had to be at least 6 hours. And then there also needed to be like an art activity and a PE activity. And I know that's another big frustration for parents in realizing like, oh, now I just noticed my kid sits on the couch all day and doesn't do anything. Well, create an activity time where the kiddo is at least moving throughout the day, whether an hour is suggested by I think the Heart Health Association, that we need to move at least 10,000 steps and be active at least 10 minutes an hour. I know for working families, that's probably not practical, but good resources for that are like Go Noodle, Just Dance off of YouTube, yoga off of YouTube, just creating a thing where they're mimicking something. This is easier for younger kids because the moment they hear the go noodle, they usually get excited for what activity is about to happen, or Just Dance. For your older kiddos, if they like basketball, if you have a basketball hoop in your driveway, hey, you know what? Take a break from reading. How about you go outside and shoot baskets or something along those lines? Again, the motivation of each kid is different. Some kids would rather be outside playing than doing their schoolwork. So that could be an award system. Like tricking your kid to do their homework, to do more schoolwork is the best win-win for a parent situation. Hey, if you do 30 minutes of reading, you can go outside and play for 30 minutes. Oh, cool. They're going to do it not realizing that the 30 minutes outside jumping on the trampoline is also for PE. Like, they're not going to read their curriculum and saying, oh, Mom, you tricked me. You had me do PE instead of play. Like, that's not how that's going to work. But are there any other questions? I'm kind of going through a cycle because, again, my experience comes from a different place because I live with one person. I have health insurance. I didn't have to make a decision to send a kid back to school. I don't have to worry about my grandkids exposing something to me or their family. Like, me, it's more the aspect of, like, I have to make sure I keep the kids in the classroom safe, which every teacher is going to do that to do their best ability of following their guidelines that their district provides. I don't know a teacher out there that's going to say, you know, I don't believe in masks. Everyone, let's take off our mask and let's hang out and hug each other. Like, I don't know a teacher that's going to do that. So where are your guys' concerns and questions? Cheryl.
About the air quality inside the classrooms, like your experience this summer, do you have a classroom where you're able to open windows and get fresh air coming and going? And
my experience, yes. Even in my normal classroom, I have 2 larger windows where I can drop them down and let the airflow there. Leaving the door open, that works. I mean, I'm a little on the louder side, so sometimes people will come shut my door, but my classroom philosophy is a little different. I don't expect kiddos to be quiet all day. So sometimes people come shut my door, which again doesn't hurt my feelings. I know my voice can carry. But in my school, yes, almost all the classrooms have windows. And for the classrooms that don't have windows, it's more like your reading interventionist and your math interventionist. And I believe from the experience of summer school, they're actually doing that more in the hallway versus putting all kids in a single room. They're doing it more outside of the teacher's classroom or even inside the teacher's classroom. So.
That's good to know. I have a lot of concern about air quality in terms of being inside buildings, especially this winter. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, again, my classroom, I'm lucky enough, I have 2 windows I can open up. And usually in the winter they are open because my classroom gets the privilege of being 100 degrees.
Good Lord.
And everything else.
One of those buildings. Okay.
Yeah. No, just my room. Like the room across from me will be very comfortable, but my room, it is what it is. We make it work in my room. Or it'll be really cold and I have kids wearing their coats, which is odd too. So it's in the middle. Never in the middle, actually. It's either one or the other.
Wow.
I have a question about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. And I was going to say with the air quality, a lot of districts are doing what they can. So it's one of those things that if a teacher's room doesn't have windows, depending on what district they're in, they may say something to their admin and their admin may get them like an air purifier or something like that. But again, it depends on the district, the money that the district has, or if the teacher's comfort, because it's one of those things that the teacher may themselves buy that because they're worried about their own health. Amy.
I am really curious about this idea of autonomy and the different ways to sort of include a kid in the decision making about their day. I know, like, thinking back to the conscious discipline class that we did at the beginning of the pandemic, like, it really shifted so much of the mentalities from like what I experienced in school. And so I'm curious about, like, if you have any advice about what are some sort of incremental ways to to get a kid to take ownership by including them in the decision making. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would probably work more for virtual. So obviously, if your teacher says, hey, we're meeting this time, this day, there could be non-negotiables and negotiables about their schedule. So sitting with the kid, like, hey, this is, like, kind of list out what everything is, which can be very overwhelming. So maybe break it up, like, in parts, like, this is what we need to accomplish together. These are your non-negotiable times. So let's say your teacher says 9 a.m. we're meeting for 30 minutes for our class meeting. So it would look like, my expectation for you is to show up to those meets at 9:30. However, before that, like break up the schedule, like, so math, reading, science, social studies, getting ready, breakfast, lunch. Like, what would your schedule, what would you like to do through the day? And then, like, your non-negotiables could be like, well, meeting with the teacher, waking up, and ending time. So regardless of, so you could say your end time is 4 p.m. Your beginning time has to be 9. And your other non-negotiable is, this is when your teacher wants to meet with you. However, through this time period, when would you like to do reading? When would you like to do math? When would you like to do these parts? When would you like breaks? So, like, your kiddo could say, well, from like 11 to noon, that's when I would kind of like to rest, decompress, and have me time. Okay, then as a parent, if you set up a schedule, you have to honor the schedule that you made together. So even if they didn't finish all their reading by 11, well, 11, it creates, like, well, that's their time, even if they didn't finish something. Now, it's a difference if they just chose not to do any of their reading and you take their me time, because, like, that happens in education all the time. Like, if a teacher goes, hey, I noticed that we're just kind of playing around, we're not completing our reading worksheet, here are your choices. You can either start working on it now and finish it, or do as much as you can, or I can use some of your time to complete this activity. So it's one of those things, rarely a child will say, well, just take my time. I'd rather do it during recess anyways. Now, you have the strong-willed kids that will say that, just to see if they'll call your bluff. But again, it's that accountability that if you take their recess time, say, look, you chose this during reading, you chose to do this, and this is the consequence or the outcome from it. So that could give them the autonomy of, like, kind of setting up their schedule. Because some, like me, not a morning person. So weird enough, I have to actually wake up early to make sure I'm in a decent mood by school. Like, I can't, like, or sleep in, but then I feel rushed. So it's one of those things that I wake up earlier to make sure I'm in a decent mood by school time. Well, if your kiddo isn't a morning person, start their start time at 10 a.m. and let them work till 5. Like, creating that time where they are able to be themselves, but also, again, with the non-negotiable, if their teacher wants to meet at 9:30, well then, hey, your start time's not, like, it's 9:30, that's a non-negotiable, that's when your teacher needs to see you. And then just holding that schedule accountable. And then if you know that there's going to be changes in the schedule, again, no one likes someone springing up, oh, hey, by the way, you have a meeting at 9 a.m. Oh, well, that throws off my whole day because 9 a.m. I planned on finishing the report that's due at 11, kind of thing. So just like if you know that they or you or someone in the house, like their schedule is going to be altered, kind of discuss that like as soon as you know. So like if you know they have a doctor's appointment Thursday, even starting on like Monday, hey, remember, like we have a doctor's appointment on Thursday. Thursday's going to look different. If you want to, like, how would you like to change the schedule to make this work? We may have to work earlier. We may have to work later. Kind of just also giving that autonomy of choice.
Yeah, and that also seems like it would be a good thing to do with the reward system, like, you know, figuring out what those rewards are. I don't want to cut anybody off if they have other questions, but I'm curious about like, what if a kid gets sick? Like, are there, you know, like let's say a kid gets sick and like what happens then?
Oh, back to the reward system. Don't let that be a punishment. If they don't make their reward, then they just don't get their reward time. Don't make them do extra work during that time. Don't have them. It's just they continue with their day. The reward system is a positive reinforcement. And if you turn that reward time into a punishment time, then they're not going to work for that reward. Like thinking about negative reinforcement, guess what? My personality type is if you're going to punish me, well, then I'm going to go for the max sentence because I'm already in trouble. I might as well make the rest of the day that look that way too. Like I'm having fun making you mad. Like I'm already in trouble, so I might as well just do this all day long. And then if you like, well, guess what? Then that takes tomorrow's recess. Well, guess what? Now I already know I don't get tomorrow's recess, so I'm going to make you mad tomorrow too. Like, we can do this all week long. I don't care. I'm already not getting my free time. So just making sure that, like, the consequences are justified, reasonable, and also that it's not overpowering. Because if you think about when you have a bad day and then it just keeps escalating, getting worse, worse, and worse, then nothing in that's going to get better. And kiddos are the same way. Like if they're just in trouble, you know what? You could say, hey, we're not going to do this all the time, but I noticed that we're having a rough day. You didn't make your goal, but how about we do a reset and you get this time anyways? Because think about how many times you're having a bad day and you just wish someone was like, you know what? Let's just not do this activity. We're having a rough day. Let's just kind of hang out, watch TV. Like teachers, we don't get to watch TV, but like teachers have time where it's like, you know, we're having a rough day. Let's do a quick indoor recess. Let's reset our brains, our attitudes. Let's do something happy, positive for 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. 10, 15 minutes times, reset, and then get back on track. As for kiddos getting sick, back to the original question that just popped in my brain and I didn't want that opportunity to be missed. When a kiddo is sick, I actually don't have the answer for that. Our district hasn't quite gone through all the guidelines with us of what that looks like. Like, so if someone were to test positive in our room, I don't quite know what quarantine looks like. I don't know what any of that looks like. I do suggest, though, if you're doing virtual learning, email the teacher. Hey, just so you know, Brian here, he has a fever. He's not feeling great. If we don't do any of the work today, that's why he's sleeping, he's resting, he's getting better. And then the teacher will probably tell you how to handle that after they're better. Because rarely no one's sick for just one day unless it's a weird 24-hour bug, but even the next day you're not at 100%. So it could be one of those things that the teacher's like, oh, hey, instead of doing all of this, whenever they feel better, could you make sure that they do this assignment, and then don't quite worry about the rest. Because it's one of those things in education world, when your kid is sick for 3 days, as a teacher, I'm not going to have them do every single activity they missed. I need to know that they know this standard and this standard. The rest of the activities just either kept with that standard of extra like practice, or it's one of those things like it becomes what's essential, what's not essential. Like, what do I want your kiddo knowing by the end of the week kind of thing.
Cool.
Again, the first thing though is I would email the teacher, because it's one of those things like, hey, he's sick, he's not going to be able to do the activities today or show up to your morning meeting. I just wanted to let you know. It's that communication piece, because sickness is going to happen regardless if it's a pandemic or flu, or kind of like the normal school year. When your kiddo's out sick, you usually call the school, hey, my kiddo's not going to show up. Same for virtual.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Do you know any helps online for math problems?
So like if they're having a hard time with a math problem and you want like an explanation kind of thing, or what are you talking about?
Well, I don't know about it's not necessarily specific problems.
Mm-hmm.
Say that you have a problem like 2x plus 3y equal 4x plus y. How do
Okay.
you solve that problem?
Oh, so it's one of those things that if it pertains to the lesson, I would first ask the kiddo, well, did you watch the video or the material provided to explain it? Because I know my experience from virtual learning, I did extra videos to explain problems, and then emailing parents like, oh, I set up a video online. Did they by chance watch it? 9 out of 10 times the parent went, I had no idea that video existed.
Right.
So again, because it's that communication piece. Like, there's a lot of trusting to a 12-year-old that they're gonna get online and do everything necessary. Me personally, if I see a video, gonna go and skip the video and do the other parts. And then if I found out, oh, this is a lot harder, that's when I go and watch the video. Rarely, my personality type, do I watch the video first. Nope, don't have time. And same for kids. If they think they can get away from the video first, they're going to get away from the video, go to the work. So make sure that they watch the video. And then as a parent, if they watch the video and there's still like a misconception, go ahead and, because I know me as a math teacher, I want to see what you've already tried before I explain it to you. Even that way I can look at your work and I could be like, oh, instead of adding there, you're supposed to do the like opposite function. So instead of adding, what should you have done? Oh, subtraction. Okay, now try it and see what you get, kind of thing. But again, it's one of those things that your virtual teacher is still there. So have your kiddo try the problem, take a picture of it, send it to the teacher. Hey, we tried it this way. Can you kind of explain where we went wrong? Because again, teachers don't expect parents to be teachers. We're still getting paid to be your teacher, even if it's virtually. If you have questions or like anything, go ahead and send them to the teacher teaching the information. Because as a teacher, I would rather questions come to my email and me explain it how I'm teaching the curriculum than list like, because we all have heard it, oh, that Common Core math, that new math, we've all heard it. We have opinions about it. It's one of those things, though, that yes, you can show your child how you would solve it, but if your kiddo gets frustrated, well, that's not how Miss Martin showed me. Instead of saying, well, they're doing it, but instead of creating that confrontation, it's one of those things, well, show me how Miss Martin shows you. Like, again, teachers aren't asking parents to learn a whole different way of math. We're not asking that. It's one of those things that instead of creating confrontation and a barrier, because again, as a teacher, I've heard, well, my dad says you're doing it wrong, that you're supposed to do it this way. Then I'm put in a position, well, yeah, your dad's correct. Your dad's absolutely right. That is a way you can solve it. This is the strategy I'm showing you because it supports your brain development. And so then they're like, well, what do you mean? And then it creates like, no teacher, no parent wants to create a relationship. Well, your teacher's wrong or your parent. So it's creating a conversation of, I always go, oh, that's 100% how you can do that. And you're going to learn that way in 6th grade. Right now, though, your brain likes to learn it this way because it makes sense to you, kind of thing. Like, yeah, your parent, absolutely correct. You put a 0 there and you continue multiplying. But it's one of those things that, like, the development-wise, we're teaching math this way because it supports the child's brain development. Abstract thinking doesn't quite get there until 5th and 6th grade. And even then, it's hit and miss. But my advice on that, again, is to have your kiddo try of what they know to show, like, these are the steps I've taken from the lesson. I still didn't get the correct answer. Then taking a picture of it, emailing it to your teacher. That way the teacher knows, oh, I see what you did. And then kind of navigate where it didn't necessarily go the way you wanted it to go in the problem.
Okay.
And that's just through my experience. As the math teacher, I can tell you so many times I've gotten an email, my kid doesn't understand number 4. Oh, okay, well, what does number 4 say? What does it look like? What did the kiddo try? That way I can kind of see where that misconception is, and then I can navigate through the misconception of what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, it's very time consuming because realistically, a lot of parents are going to be working from home or at work, that their kiddo, or even teaching your child, like, hey, this is how you take a picture. This is how you email it to your teacher if you need help. This is how you check to see if she's replied to your question.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's one of those things, like, teachers aren't there to teach your child how to email. But if it's one of those things that if you show them how to do it, then it gives them the autonomy of, oh, I don't quite understand this problem. And you set the expectation of, well, you have to try it first. Take a picture of it, email it to your teacher, see what they're going to say about the problem. That way, again, you can continue working or doing what you need to do, but then your child understands the expectation of, well, when I'm having trouble, it's okay to ask for help. Like, I don't have to solve this by myself. Because I know for my district, virtual teachers aren't working from home. There's a building in the district that we're all, like, they're working in the building. And it's one of those things that they're going to be in this building majority of the day. And I'm going to guess that the day will go by faster if they have questions to answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Shanice. Any last questions before we wrap up? I mean, I'm sure Shanice would answer your questions.
Regardless of a class. Like, if you sent me a text or a call, I would love to answer them.
Well, it's been very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I do recommend, I know, Carol, your situation is a little bit different because your grandson is older, but the Discipline Differently class, the recording is online, and there's really helpful information in there that I think is applicable to lots of different age groups. Maybe not quite the way that they're suggested to be implemented, but I think the concepts themselves are really, really helpful.
But it's on YouTube?
It's, I'll send you the link. It's on our website.
Oh.
It's called, there's a page called Discipline Differently.
Okay, thank you.
Once you find out, like, what motivates your grandson, it will 100 times make schooling, like, you don't want to make it where they no longer like the activity that they enjoy, but it's one of those things that, like, once you find out, like, oh, they may not like reading, but guess what? They love sharks. Well, get a few books about sharks, and even if they're not reading it and first just looking at the pictures, it's one of those things that you're at least getting them interested in books again. Once you get them interested in books, I mean, as a reading teacher, once you get them interested in books, then eventually you can get them interested in reading the books of what it's about, kind of thing. Either way, everyone had to make a hard choice about doing virtual, in-person, homeschool. So either way, I'm proud of you, regardless if whatever you chose, Me personally, I'm excited to get back in the classroom. I know it's going to look differently, and I know everyone's anxious about what it looks like, what it's going to feel like. It's one of those things, I'm trusting my district to do what's best for me and the kids. And that's very hard to do when we're in the middle of a pandemic. Virtually, hey, if you picked virtual, I'm proud of you. That itself is hard, to be making sure that you're monitoring your kids' learning and understanding what they're doing and putting on a teacher role hat and a parent role hat. Just don't forget that, like, your teacher is there.
Mhm.
Your teacher, no one's going into virtual learning thinking, ooh, I don't have to work. Like, the parents are going to take care of it. No, if that was the case, there would be no school, because we would just assume that parents would teach their kids. And teaching kids isn't easy. If that was the case, you would have chose to be a teacher.
Well, and it's funny because we do have 4 educators right here.
Yeah, but even they can tell you that teaching
yeah.
your own kid is different.
For sure.
Like, it's easy for me to go over there and teach your kiddo. Like, we could do the same lesson, but I'm going to guess that after my lesson, your kid would be like, oh, I get it. But it's just the relationship dynamic that's different. Because kids know that their parents are probably going to love them no matter what. And whereas a teacher, like, most of the time a kiddo tries to, like, impress the teacher. Like, oh, I'm the smartest kid in the room. Check this out, kind of thing. But either way, all decisions were hard. You did what was best for you and your family. It doesn't matter if you chose virtual or in person. Your kiddo is hopefully going to value education and get educated no matter what. So,
Yay!
yay!